Thanks for clicking on this video. This video is about the Affordable Homes Fund 21-26 CME route and is video 2A of claiming. The video is about taking approved firm offer line data through to being ready to make your claim. My name's Susan Roberts. This video was recorded in May 2021 and therefore reflects IMS at this point in time. This video is aimed at anyone who is looking to take approved offer line data through to being ready to claim. Those offer lines must be firm for this video. There'll be a video 2B that will be about taking an indicative approved offer line through to being ready to claim. And that will then be followed by 2 claiming videos. So I'm going to start off by looking at how to use this video. If any of you have seen my videos before, this should be familiar to you. I'm then going to go on to a reminder of what was in a firm offer line. So we're going to look at one of those. And then we're going to look at the corresponding scheme profile, which is the approved data from the offer line. It moves to a different part of IMS, which is called profiles. We're going to look at what transfers, what doesn't transfer, and what are the new fields. I'm then going to look at what we call maintaining a scheme profile. So that's making changes to it. Once your changes have been made, you'll need to validate, and I'm going to look at some save and validate errors. And at the end, I will mention the other claiming videos in the series. So all the data that you're going to see in IMS in this video has been set up specifically for this video. It's not live data, it's not a real provider that you're going to be able to see. So there are no data protection issues. These claiming videos are also going to be included in the Rough Sleeves Accommodation Programme playlist. I will try and point out where things are different. The videos are for 21-26. So there won't be anything specific to RSAP in there, but the commonalities will be covered in the video. So how to use this video. So in all our videos, you will see the description just underneath. And if you can see the show more underneath, if you click on that show more, what it does is it brings up the timings for the video. Those timings are actually hot links to certain sections of the video. So if you want to jump to a particular point in the video, just go back to the description, click on show more, and show that detail below. So first of all, a reminder about firm offer lines. So I'm going to do a refresher of what a firm offer line looks like. The screens that you're going to see in IMS are going to be very similar. So in this video only, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset my screens temporarily so that the offer line screens appear in grey and the profile screens in this video are going to be coloured blue. And that's to help you see instantly which one is which. I will point out the differences between the two. So the next time you see my screen, I will be in IMS with a grey screen. Okay, I am on the opening screen of IMS. The first thing I'm going to draw your attention to before I go and look at that offer line is this first line. So it says sign off contract type record. Now this list here is your workflow. And this one's got an action against it. Lead provider to assign responsibility for scheme and payment processing. So that needs to be complete before you will be able to make your first claim within the system, and somebody needs to have the right authorities to do that. I'm going to cover this item and the actual sign off of your contract in IMS in video, claiming video number 3. Okay, so let me go into the offers system. Offers system. And I'm going to go to offer line. and I'm going to pull up all my offer lines for the program. So all I've done is click on the drop down and let me find the program, which is there, and click on the OK button. Okay, so I have set up some firm lines and one indicative line. So I'm going to go into the one that's marked as video demonstration 2A. So to get in there, whichever screen you're in IMS, and here I'm in an offer line window, so I can't get to profiles in there. I always say click on the second item in the column, so not the ID, but can you see the way that when I move into the offer line name, that the video pointer, the pointer changes to a hand. So let me click on that link. Okay, so this takes me to my offer line. So I'm going to point out some of the distinguishing parts now. So an offer line has only 3 tabs: geography, products, and site. If it was an indicative offer line, we wouldn't have the site tab there. So geography, basic geography information, local authority, and which part of the country that then fits into. Let me go to the site. So when you entered your offer line, you will have added this one site to the offer line. Let me click on the products. Okay, so you can see down here we've got some total. We've got total scheme cost, capital information, funding requested. They've all come from the information that we have put under the subproduct, which is the affordable rent subproduct in this case. Offer line source is down as CME, and processing route is up at the top. That will move later on in profiles, and this part of the screen won't appear in terms of totaling up those values. The funding requested will appear somewhere else on screen. So let me go into the details of the affordable rent. Okay, so you can see our units, funding, and then a series of tabs underneath. Now, the first thing that you'll notice is that although initially my screen flashed up with some white boxes, everything has now been greyed out. And that is because this is an allocated offer line. So I can see the offer line status at the top, and it says allocated. I'll also see that on the previous screen. It's down as allocated there. So let me go back in. So the tabs that we have are organisation, units, design, capital contributions, scheme costs, scheme forecast, scheme progress, additional information, and MMC. So the first tab is organisations. So relatively straightforward information that you'll have provided. I'm just going to point this one out at the bottom about working with SME contractors. This one will move in a profile and will have an extra question associated with it. So let me go to the units. So the detail of the units is contained within the individual unit IDs. And I've only got one, but you might have multiples here. Okay, so quite a lot of information is provided on the units. Mine is designated for supported and vulnerable people, just so that I could get the other tabs available in case I needed those. For those of you that are doing RSAP, some of those tabs will always be available because you will be dealing with vulnerable people as part of that program. I'm not going to go through the individual items on this screen. If you want to see that detail, please go to the offer line. The details that are under here is not going to change unless you need to change it in your profile. So let me click on the cancel button and let me go to design. Okay, so we've got a whole tab on design. If you've got more than 10 units, you are asked to complete the information at the bottom of the screen. Again, you'll be able to change that in the profile as you will any ticks that appear here. but this is going to say identical on a profile screen. Let me go to capital contributions. So capital contributions have all the sources that you are allowed potentially to have under this program, and you'll see there's a value in every box, even if that is 0, and a 0 value at the bottom. That information and the options there aren't going to change on a profile. Okay, scheme costs. So this is the one where everything has a letter label, and in some cases you will see sums of those letters. So item E, for example, acquisition costs, that is equals D. So it just transfers that value through. Important thing to watch, certainly on profiles as you make changes, is that the surplus or deficit always needs to be 0 when you come to save and validate. Your scheme forecast will look very, very slightly different on a profile and will change slightly over time as you come to make that claim. So I'll be showing you that in the scheme video, which is going to be video number 4. Next tab is scheme progress. Scheme progress says where your planning, land and works is up to. This information does not transfer through to a profile. You'll be asked to enter the achievement data of some of these when you come to claim your scheme, but it doesn't check back in case you got any of these dates wrong or anything like that. Next tab is additional information. So this is where you answered a series of questions. Again, this information doesn't transfer through to a profile and you're not required to re-enter it. And finally, the MMC tab does transfer through to a profile and is all editable on a profile. So that was a quick whistle-stop tour of what we entered previously on a firm offer line. So I'm going to click on cancel and cancel again to come out. So now that's scheme profile data from a firm offer line. So just before I take you into that, just to note that profiles have what's known as version control on them, and you can only edit the most recent version. So sometimes people do go in there and try and make changes and can't, and that will often be around them trying to edit a version that isn't the most recent. But IMS does take you to the most recent when you go in there, and there are what I call video controls, navigation controls to get you to be any version that you want to get to. So when Homes England approved your firm offer line, that data is copied to a single profile in IMS, and the system automatically creates 2 versions for you. In version 1, all the data automatically temporarily moves to a bulk line. And then in version 2, which is the version that you will start working with, that bulk line is 0 and all the data transfers to a new scheme profile. And it's that scheme profile that we will look at and that you will be able to edit and create additional versions of. When I go into IMS to start off with, we'll be looking at a version that we haven't set to edit at this point. So because I'm going to be dealing with profiles now, my screens, when you see them, will be blue, not grey. Okay, so I'm back in IMS at the opening screen. I'm going to go back into the office system, office system. And then this time I'm going to click on profiles. And it's automatically filled in my partnership. And I'm going to pull through everything that's for the 21-26 program and click on the OK button. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to go into the same profile that relates to my offer line. But just so that you're aware, on the line that I'm going to look at, if I wanted to I could get back into the offer line. My recommendation is that whichever button you've pressed at the top, that's all that you look at in here, and that you always go to the second column in. If you want to look at an offer line, my recommendation is that you go to the offer line button first to do it. That is to help stop you getting lost within IMS. I also make sure that I only have one screen open at a time. So when I'm in a profile, I haven't also got offer lines hidden behind that. So let me click on to get into the profile. So again, it's second column in. You'll notice that the highlighter changes. Okay, so this screen starts off looking quite different to our profile. You will see at the top we've got this bulk line, but you'll see that everything's been zeroed out on it. If I click on the next one, you'll see highlighted the scheme profile. And this has the same 12 units and £235,000 that my offer line had on it. So to get in to see the detail, I'm going to click on the bit that's the description, and my pointer will change. Okay, so I'm going to click to go in. Okay, so the first thing to notice is that we've got this create a new profile line version. We'll use that a bit later to actually edit the data in IMS. So the first tab on a profile is brand new. We've got the offer line description, number of units, funding, processing route, and site ID. So that's all information that came from other tabs in an offer line. So site had a tab of its own. The description was up the top in an offer line, as were the units, the funding, and the processing route was just above where the tenure appeared. So let's look at organisations. So this screen looks the same over this side, but I identified that on a profile, the item that was under here would move, and that SME contractors is now over the other side of the screen. The reason for that is because if you identify yes, there'll be a box underneath that is going to need completing on a profile, and I'll do that in the next part of the video. Unit details. The screen looks slightly different at this point, and that's because we've got some totaling up of information. But if I were to go into the unit details themselves, they're actually identical to what you had previously. And unless you need to change unit details, this information will be fine. So don't forget that unit details goes as far as the rent, which also includes the expected market value of the unit. So let me click on cancel to get out, and let me go to design. So this design screen is identical to the screen that we had in the offer line. The next tab is new, which is building for life. So on this screen, you're asked, have you carried out a building for life assessment? Yes, no. And then identify though, if you have, identify that you have a green score. Some additional information also on that screen. If you've worked on previous programs with us, this information used to appear below the unit details, but has now moved to the Building for Life tab. So that's the whole life cycle costs and information about communal areas, if there are any. Next, capital contributions. And this is identical to capital contributions screen on the offer line. Screen costs is almost identical. The bit that's different is on item F, where we've got some additional information. There's a calculation of works cost per metre squared, and then also a drop down on what the works cost are based on. So next along is the scheme forecast tab. And I did say that this would have changed slightly. So there's now a column in there for milestone achieved. As we progress through a scheme, there will also be a column that appears over this side of the screen, which is identifying the stage of your scheme. Is that on which of those have actually been completed and which haven't in the scheme. But otherwise, this is exactly the same. Let me move across to the final one, which is MMC, and that is exactly identical to an offer line. So let me click on close. So I'm now going to look at making changes to that scheme profile or maintaining a scheme profile. So first of all, some reminders. So it's important that the details on your scheme profile are accurate, particularly important for milestones, and that's at all times. If your milestones aren't accurate, we haven't got your forecasts for claims, and it may not be possible if you try and bring forward a claim to pay you the month that you're looking to claim, if you haven't identified that earlier in the process. And it's important that all your costs, your contributions, your valuations, and so on are accurate and match your other records within your organisation at the time that you claim a milestone. You will be self-certifying that everything that is input in the system at the point of a milestone claim is accurate. So effectively, that's the audit point for data in the system. As I said previously, before you can make changes to a scheme profile, you need to set it so that it can be edited. And you do that by creating a new profile version. For those of you ultimately who are looking at splitting or phasing of a scheme profile, I'm not going to cover that in this video. I'm going to cover that as part of video 2B, which is all about splitting units and schemes out of indicative offer lines. The process is almost identical. So I'm going to cover both in that video. So now I'm going to go back to IMS. We're going to look at those new data fields and the key data to check. So I'm going to go back into the scheme profile. Okay, so I identified before that to edit it, I need to click on this create a new profile version. And one of the most common questions we do get asked is, I've gone into my profile and it won't let me edit it. There'll be two reasons for that. Either you haven't clicked on the create a new profile line version, or you're logged in as a security administrator. Security administrators can't change any data within the system. So if you do have both an organization user and a security administrator ID, please be very careful with your IDs. So before I click on that button, what I want you to look at is this green area of the screen that's behind. So this says overall status approved and version number 2. So let me click on the create a new profile line version. So once I've clicked on the box, you can see that that still says approved. So what I'm going to do quickly is I'm going to click on the close button. And this is just to demonstrate you can go straight into editing your data. And what I'm going to show you will happen as soon as you click on the save or the close button. So what it's now identified is that the status of that scheme profile is changed. It doesn't tell me what I've changed on it yet. And actually, we know that we've changed nothing. But over at the top of the screen, you can again see overall status is changed. So that means that one or more of the scheme profiles that are here have changed. In this case, we've only got one, but if you'd split a scheme, you might have a number of them. Or if you're working with indicative, you'd have a number of them. And you'll see it's version 2. I talked about some video buttons and navigation buttons. So do what they say on the tin. So if I move to the previous one, you can see that version 2 was approved. And now if I go into version 2, there is no button to click. If I click on close and go to the end, then I'm also automatically taken to the latest version. So let me go through those blank items that need to be completed. So on your profile screen, if you need to change the description at all, you can do. If you need to decrease the units, you can do. And we'd expect a proportionate decrease in the funding if you did that. You can also, if necessary, change a site there. But normally this information will stay the same. Go to Organisation tab. So I can change the organisations if I need to. On this one, if I want to get rid of an organisation, I highlight it and then click on the red cross. I'm not going to do that. So on mine, I had, are you intending to work with SME contractors? And I left that blank on my offer line. So let me now put that to yes. Okay, so you can see here that I've got a blank box that's appeared for me to identify SME partners. So to add a partner, I click on the blue plus. And then it's moved me down to the table and I can put a name in here. No lookups or anything like that. So you would enter their proper name in there. If you wanted more, you could add that. So okay, if you then find out a bit later that you're not working with them, you can click on the X. Are you sure? Yes. Am I sure? Yes. Okay, so I'm deliberately going to leave that blank because I want to leave some errors within the system for me, and that'll be quite an important one to complete. So next, the unit details. Information at the bottom, you can see automatically populates through. Double click on the any lines to open them. And all of these are editable. Now, the important ones to watch in particular is that you've got the right units and the right size of units, that your revenue funding, if applicable, client group and happy principals are completed if they appear. But on the rent tab, these are important items. So your rent values are orderable points, as are your expected market value, and that is a per unit. So all the units are the same size, shape, and use. You would expect to have the same expected market value. So let me click on cancel. There's nothing I need to add on there, and let me go across to design. So it says, please indicate whether the design of your scheme meets the government's principles of good design as set out in the National Design Guide. So I'm going to identify a few that on this scheme is going to apply. If that underneath was the less than 10 homes had changed, so the building for healthy life criteria, then I can change that as I can change the number that's there. Okay, so the Building for Life is the new tab. So have you carried out a Building for Life assessment? It could be yes or no. I'm going to actually leave that one blank. If you have, then it wants those completed below. Whole life cycle costs. The options I get are shown on screen. Again, for now, I'm going to leave that blank to see some errors. Communal area, I'm going to put in a no. If I'd put in yes, I would get asked for that value. So let me go back to no. So capital contributions. So the capital contributions screen is identical to the offer line, but it's highly likely that things have shifted slightly when you come to do your scheme and your actual physical claims for this site. So it's possible that some of these values are going to change. So it might be that we've added and had to add an extra £100, for instance, of our own resources to this scheme. But we change these just like any other value. Let me go to the scheme costs. Now, what you'll notice now is because I changed to capital contribution, that has had an impact on the overall surplus or deficit because the capital contributions data comes through in item I here. So that's gone to ending in 720. That ends in 720. For those of you that are unregistered bodies, this item J will open up for you, and that is a transfer value. The new field is works cost based on. So click on that drop down, and I'm in this case going to put QS estimates. So next, the scheme forecast tab. Okay, so before I've gone to that tab, IMS wants me to do a save. Okay, when I've clicked on save, it wants me to enter some comments. So adding new fields, updating to claim. Okay, so click on the save button. So I'm now going to move to the scheme forecast tab. And this is our scheme forecast information. So I'm going to look at changing some of these dates, and I'm deliberately going to make some very specific changes within the system. So let me first of all change the acquisition date. So to do that, I click on it. I can either type in a new date or click on the drop down. I'm going to select an August date now, exactly 1 month on. So I'm going to click on select. And then I'm going to go to my start on site. Now my start on site now is showing as before the acquisition. So my start on site needs to change. I'm going to move that one to September. And again, I'm going to move it on exactly a month. So I'm going to select a November date for that. And I'm also going to make a change to my final cost date. So I've deliberately made changes to these dates so they're moving both month, quarter and year. And that will count in IMS as material changes to an approved bid. So we'll see some material changes within the system. Let me move along to the next tab, which is MMC. So on the MMC tab, if I need to change anything, I can. But at the moment, mine says not applicable and not applicable on the two primaries. So there's no requirement for me to enter information in the other off and on site contributions. Okay, so I'm done. So if I haven't already had to save partway through and make a comment, I would now click on the comments box and add that to the screen. So next, I'm going to look at saving and validating your profile, both of which at various points are going to give me some errors and warning messages because of changes that I've made within the system. So once all your data has been updated to the current position, you'll need to submit those changes to Homes England. So there's a 3-stage process to that. So that is save, validate, and then finally submit. And you need to have the correct rights to be able to submit changes to us. Save and validate will both do different sets of checks on the data and may return errors. The save errors will come up one at a time, rather than the validate, which you may get multiple errors appearing at once. So I'm going to now look at saving in IMS. So back in IMS, so I'm now going to click on the Save button. Okay, so I've got one message that's appeared, and they will only appear in ones on the screen. So it says acquisition data must be a working day. So click on the OK button. So let me change that. Let me put 13, select and save. Okay, and it has come up with no further error messages on a save for me. Now, I know that there are still errors there. So there's still a surplus or deficit from when I changed my capital contributions. There's still a number of blank fields that are missing within the data. When I come to the next stage, they should start to appear. So let me click on the Close button. So the next stage is to validate within IMS. When we validate, then we're going to get a number of different types of validation message, and they fall into 4 groups. So we're going to have errors, change information, messages, and material changes. Now, having said you get 4 different types, if you've got any errors in the data, then that is all that you will see until those validation messages have been cleared. And I know that the line that we're working with at the moment does have errors in it. It's got an error because there's a surplus or deficit on the screen, and we won't be able to proceed until that one has been cleared. But then afterwards, we should see some. So next, I will be back in IMS and look at how we respond to those material changes. Okay, so to validate, I need to be back to this main screen of the profiles, the one with the versions on it. To do that, I click on the Validate button at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so we've got 2 messages on screen that are down as errors. So the first one is building for life and other quality data questions have not been answered. So it's not going to let me proceed until I've done that. It's also telling me that there's surplus or deficit in there. Now this has an error reference on them. Let me move my screen window a bit. So error reference, I always used to think was a fancy coding, but it's actually not. If you look at that number, it's 82357. It's actually referring to the profile ID. So if I click on this error reference, what it will do is it will take me to open that. When I've clicked on the Save button to save the change that I make, it will revalidate for me. So that's much quicker than you having to come out, go in there, make the change, and then click on the validate button. It's going to do it for me as I go along. So let me do that one for you. So the first one was the Building for Life tab. So have you carried out a Building for Life assessment? I'm going to put yes on mine, and I'm going to tick some of those questions. You would obviously tick those that match your actual scheme. Whole life cycle costs. Well, on my scheme, I'm going to say that they were not applicable, and I haven't got any communal areas. And then I'm going to click on the Save button and close. And when I've done that, it's automatically taken me back and it's revalidated. And you can see now we've only got 1 error. So the calculated surplus deficit on the scheme is not 0. So let me click on the error reference again. I could have changed both of those together, but what I wanted to do was to prove that that does update. So capital contributions is where I added that extra £100 in. So let me delete that now and click on the save and the close button. Okay, so I've now got a number of validation messages. So I've got quite a lot here. I've got quite a lot of monthly delivery changes. I've got a unit change, an MMC error message. Okay, so let me look in more detail at the monthly profiles. So I change acquisition, starts, and completions data within the system. So the first monthly change relates to acquisitions, and it says that the monthly profile of acquisitions in this version is different to the monthly profile in the previous version. So I changed the acquisition date, I moved it on by 1 or more months. The next one down relates to completions, as does the one below. So the first one is to do with the payments for completions. The second one on completions is about the unit completions. So acquisitions don't count as a unit, they just count as a payment. Completions and starts both count as payments and unit data. So what I should find is that on the start, I get the same. So I do. So I've got a monthly profile for starts, payments changing, and a monthly profile of actual units changing. So let me scroll down a bit. So we've got some proposed unit information has changed. Doesn't tell me exactly what's changed. The next one that I'm seeing will actually not appear in the live system. And then I've got some additional unit data that's been completed. So I'm going to click on the close button. So it's now validated with no errors. And if we look at the top, we've now got an overall status of valid. So although we saw some of them on the in the video, I'm going to look at what those comment, save, and validation errors are. So a lot of the errors on saving and validating are identical to those on creating a firm offer line. So I'm not going to repeat dealing with those errors. I'm going to refer you to the new user video 2 for the program, and it's around 48 minutes that you need to be in that video. If you click on show more in the description and move to that if you are getting errors and you need to understand those errors. There's also an issue around dates. None of those dates can be lapsed dates, and IMS won't let you put actuals in on the profiles part of IMS. You need to do that via your scheme. So if you've got to a point when your planning has been achieved, then you should be marking that on the scheme and not on just on the profile. So you can't put the actuals in the system at that point. So we also saw when we were in that profile that there was some new information that hadn't been completed. So that gives us an error message. We saw the surplus or deficit on a scheme, and that means that the costs or contributions have changed. Contributions changing again will lead to a separate message appearing. Any messages will need to be addressed before you can create a scheme and make a claim within the system. So next, I'm going to look at submitting. So we saw a number of validation messages. Your opportunity to respond to those messages is within your submit comments, and you'll get a separate screen for those messages to be added, which I'll show you shortly. You must add a comment against each of the material changes that have been identified, and then separately you will need to enter an overall submission comment. You'll then click on the submit button, and that submit button passes control to Homes England to review. So let me take you into IMS to see that. So back in the individual profile, and it's currently validated, and I'm going to click on the submit button. Won't let you submit unless it has been validated first. Okay, so it first appears that we've got a lot less messages than before. The reason being is that some of these have been grouped together. So let me double click on a name to view it. So change information, there is only one lot of different information. We don't need to add a comment against that specifically. Sorry, to say that we don't need a specific comment is required. I'm looking at this column here. So on change information, messages, additional unit data completed, we don't need to add comments, but it's identifying against material changes and monthly delivery changes that there is a comment required. If you want to, you can enter a comment against each of the top three, but the only one that IMS will actually force you to do one against is this bottom one, material change. So let's just double click again. Messages, there was one about the MMC on that. So let me click on the material change one. So you can see I've got 5 here, and that's because I've changed the start on site month, I've changed the completions month, and I changed the acquisition month. So the acquisition, as before, gives us 1 change because the units don't count at acquisition, but starts and completion units do count as, so there are 2 for each of those units, and the payments are separated out. So let me click on close. And now I need to enter comments against these. So to do that, I click on the edit comments button. So I put in relevant comments. We don't need an essay in here, but information on what has changed is useful. Okay, click on the enter button. Okay, it then wants us to save because we've made comments. And then the submit button becomes active. Okay, so this is where you need an overall comment. So this will be a summary of what changes that you have made. So okay, so a comment that is relevant for your scheme. Click on the enter button. And what you will now see is the overall status of that line is submitted. So that means it's with Homes England. So let me just quickly go back into the line. So when I'm in the line, you can see that there's no opportunity to make a change. And that's because currently this is within Homes England control. So a quick mention about the other videos in this series. So the claiming videos start off with an overview of the claiming process, video 1. Video 2A is this video, and that is firm to ready to claim. 2B will be indicative, ready to claim. 3 is setting up to be able to claim, so that's going to cover payment processing, selection and contract sign-off. And video 4 will be actually doing that achieving and claiming of payments within the system. Also in the RSAP playlist. Experienced users, there is a separate playlist, and that includes a claiming upgrade from 1621.